The microstate of Liechtenstein is often underrated, but they could have become a colonial power, a pretty relevant one at that. If you don't know, there was an actual proposal that Liechtenstein would purchase Alaska in the 1870s, but this didn't go anywhere. When gold was discovered, Liechtenstein regretted their decision of not buying Alaska. I actually made a whole 3-part series on this topic. It's among my first video, which were quite bad. I will remind you to check them out later. In this fictional world, in 1867, Liechtenstein would still buy Alaska, but when they would sign the treaty, they didn't realize it because it was in Russian, so they couldn't read it. Due to the urgency of the United States of America also trying to purchase Alaska, Liechtenstein would take the gamble and sign the treaty without being able to read it. They wouldn't know what it meant, so what ended up happening is instead of Liechtenstein purchasing Alaska, Alaska would purchase Liechtenstein. Russia would also never sell Alaska to the United States. Very creative ending, I know. Shout out to Phil2505 on my Discord, who came up with this idea. In this timeline, the German Reich would still annex Austria in 1938, but this time they would also annex Liechtenstein as part of their Anschluss. Due to Liechtenstein's manpower and industry, Germany would successfully land in Britain and the United States, capitulating both. Oh wait, I lied to you. Germany would still get defeated. This time, Austria and Liechtenstein would be released as free nations, but due to their shared history of occupation, they would want to unite under one, with the birth of the Austrian Confederation. Liechtenstein would be integrated into the Vorarlberg province. Napoleon Bonaparte would in this timeline be victorious somehow. Maybe we can use my video in which Napoleon has won as a blueprint. What would happen is that Liechtenstein would be integrated into the Confederation of the Rhine. Even when it all collapses and comes crashing down, most likely Liechtenstein will remain part of a larger German kingdom. In our timeline, the state of Vorarlberg wanted to join Switzerland after the end of the Great War. This is because the new Austrian state was in shambles, with their farmlands being in independent Hungary and their industry being in independent Czechoslovakia. Their access to the sea was also blocked by independent Yugoslavia. Historically, Switzerland rejected to get Vorarlberg for free, as this would add hundreds of thousands of Catholic Germans, which would upset the balance of religion and language within Switzerland. This time, we can have Vorarlberg join Liechtenstein instead, and for the sake of this video, let's say that it continues. This would be significant during the Second World War, as when Austria would be inevitably annexed, the people dissatisfied with the new regime can move to Liechtenstein. The country can easily defend themselves in the mountains, and maybe Switzerland can also guarantee their independence. Liechtenstein would become a significant German-speaking state, not being considered a microstate, as they would be around the same size as Luxembourg, with a similar economy and population. On the 1st of March 2007, 171 Swiss soldiers accidentally entered into Liechtenstein, as they were disoriented and took a wrong turn due to bad weather. The fun fact is that Liechtenstein didn't even realize up until Switzerland let them know. This is just the most recent example of an accident Swiss invasion of Liechtenstein, which happened many times in their history. Let us use the incident of 1992, but any accidental border crossing would work. Back in 1992, the Swiss commanders had overlooked the fact that Riesenberg was not in Swiss territory and went back. But what if this wasn't the case? It's common for countries to trade land. Just look at this island divided between Sweden and Finland, where Finland accidentally built a light tower on the Swedish side, resulting in the mirroring of these borders. Switzerland would request that they do the same with Liechtenstein, but the Prince of Liechtenstein would refuse, and maybe even declare war. Since the year is late 1992, it's possible that the world is too distracted with all the new independent states right after the collapse of the Soviet Union. For example, pressuring Ukraine to give up their nuclear weapons is more important than saving Liechtenstein. As a result, Switzerland would quickly win this war and Liechtenstein would be integrated as a canton. Following the beginnings of the Cold War, Austria, Liechtenstein and Switzerland would all be neutral states. Austria used to be occupied up until 1955, when they had promised to remain neutral and never join Germany under any circumstance. All of these countries would decide to unite and form a confederation together, as to stand strong against the democracies and the communist states. If they don't do this, they risk getting influenced one by one. The country would become a regional superpower, and after the fall of communism, they would remain united, unlike Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, for example. In terms of economy, they would have among the highest GDP per capita in Europe, and have around 15 million people in terms of population. In this timeline, Liechtenstein can join the Entente shortly before Germany has capitulated. In the peace treaty, they would be awarded Vorarlberg province, as to make their entry into the war worth it, and also to punish Austria more. Nothing too interesting would change after that, but Liechtenstein has clearly abandoned their neutrality. This results in the increased possibility that the German Reich would invade Liechtenstein when the Second World War starts. What happens after that is anyone's guess. Maybe as to compensate both Austria and Liechtenstein, the Alpine Confederation gets formed, just like I suggested in the previous scenario. In our timeline, after the Second World War, Austria was occupied just like Germany. The difference is that Germany remained occupied and divided for the duration of the Cold War, while Austria wasn't. This is because Austria promised that they would remain neutral and never unite with Germany, so they were released as an independent state in 1955. But what if all of that changed and Austria was given to the Prince of Liechtenstein in 1955? This is possible because this way they can ensure that Austria remains independent and neutral state for the duration of the Cold War. Nothing much will change for both countries, with the capital maybe remaining in Vaduz due to bureaucratic reasons, although I can see it changing over time. Liechtenstein joining Switzerland and becoming a canton is perhaps the most likely option out of the ones I outlined. There are many options as to how this could have happened, but I'll go for a really interesting one. In this alternate history, the German Reich would announce their ambitions to also annex Liechtenstein as part of their Anschluss. Switzerland would intervene and offer Liechtenstein to become a canton of Switzerland. The Germans were still appeased by the West, but they decided to pursue something more valuable, like the Sudetenland, later all of Czechoslovakia and Memel. Liechtenstein would remain as part of Switzerland for the time being, integrating very well and contributing to the Swiss economy and culture. In this timeline, the Second World War would go in favor of the Germans, resulting in their victory. As a result, the German Chancellor would place his eyes on the German speakers living in the Alps. While during the war, it would be impossible to conquer Switzerland and Liechtenstein due to the amount of resources that would be required. Now that the German enemies are defeated, these resources can be spared. As a result, Germany would intervene and then Italy would join their invasion due to the Italian claims in the Italian-speaking Ticino canton from Switzerland. This would be costly, but you can assume that such an invasion would be successful, considering that Germany has already defeated their enemies of France, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union and the United States, together with all their dominions, puppets and colonies. With the collapse of the German ultranationalist regime, Liechtenstein would be freed once again, but it's unknown what would happen to the country until then. As you may have seen in many maps of Europe, the tiny microstate of Liechtenstein isn't represented with their actual borders, but with a large circle. In this alternate timeline, these are the actual borders of Liechtenstein. This would add tens of thousands of people to Liechtenstein, with their population maybe going over 100,000. A lot of industry would also get added, so Liechtenstein's GDP per capita can perhaps increase if this were to happen. In this alternate history, Liechtenstein would be the first country in the world to reach 2 billion population within their borders. Now you may ask, how is this possible? So let me tell you how. Liechtenstein would just keep declaring war on countries far away. If you're confused as to how this would increase their population of Liechtenstein, let me explain. During the Second War of Italian Unification, Liechtenstein contributed 80 soldiers, with them returning with 1 extra soldier, making them the only country I know that participated in the war and didn't lose soldiers, but actually gained 1. Now, unfortunately, this myth is only half true, as an Austrian general escorted the Liechtenstein soldiers to their country, before going back to Austria, so this is not really true. But if we ignore this reality, Liechtenstein can keep declaring war on countries far away, like Uruguay and etc. So they would keep increasing their population one by one. Eventually, Liechtenstein would have the highest population in the world, surpassing that of China and India. If China's population just keeps declining, Liechtenstein could have more population than China and India combined. Continuing the previous ending, let us not forget that all these newly created people would be soldiers, so Liechtenstein would have the highest army in the world. This would allow for them to undoubtedly conquer the world, being the first nation in the world to do so. This is a bit of a meme ending, but I still hope that you had a good laugh. Check out one of my first ever videos I made about Liechtenstein purchasing Alaska, and then the 2 follow-up videos after that. I hope to see you there.